The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, welcome along to today's webinar. You can see we've got a few people joining, so I'll just let those people come in and get comfortable before we jump into what we're going to cover today. I can see in the chat David's asking if this is a live webinar. It is indeed a live webinar. It will be recorded though, so we will have a replay available as well. Excellent. Okay, so the numbers seem to have steadied out a little bit now. So just to introduce myself, my name is Dan. If I could just get someone, please, to write in the chat whether you can hear me and see my screen okay. I assume that people can hear me. But can you also see my screen? The Getting Started webinar funnel. Brilliant. Thank you guys for confirming that. Okay, so as I was saying, my name is Dan and I work here at Convertri. You'll see me on our About Us page. Here is the team and here I am. Down here, this is what I look like, just to put a face to my name. And as it says here, I work on the customer support team, so pretty much providing everyone who uses Convertri with the assistance that they need. So if there's any issues you come across, no matter how big or small, chances are you'll have dealt with me in the past, or you might need to deal with me in the future. So whether that be on our support desk or in our Facebook group, you may well come across me after this call today. But today we're going to be teaching you guys a few things about Convertri, starting off with how to build a simple lead funnel. So if we look at this demo page here, this is what we're going to aim for after the first demonstration. And what this is here, this is a simple lead page, which allows a customer to come along, fill out their information like so, be sent then to a thank you page. These details are then added into an autoresponder. And once the form has been sent, they're taken to a thank you page like so, where they can download the lead magnet. We click here, it should download. This is an old page, so I'm not sure how this has been set up, but we'll set it up so that this button here makes the file downloaded, so that the prospect is able to then use the lead magnet, and you've then got their details. Once I've done that, I'm then going to show you some of my favorite little tricks and tips in the editor that will save you a lot of time when you are building out your pages, as well as probably the most important thing that you'll learn today, which is how to build your pages in desktop mode so that they actually mobilize well and you don't need to rebuild them in the mobile editor. And then I'm going to show you some cool new replays for other training content that we've got dropping into the app, into the knowledge base now and over the coming weeks, that are from our first ever user run and unofficial Convertri Summit, which was a great event that we ran at the start of April with 3 power users from the Facebook group. And I'm going to just talk a little bit about that and a little bit about the content that's coming soon. So before we do get started then and start building out that first lead funnel, if I could just ask all of you who are listening and in attendance today, how comfortable do you feel with Convertri so far on a scale of 1 to 10? So if you could just drop that in the chat, that would be much appreciated, just so we can see how well versed you all are with Convertri. Okay, we've got a great mix of numbers here. We've got an 8, a 7, a 2, some 3s in there and a 4. Couple of 1s, so it's a really good diverse pool, which is great because I'm sure there'll be some things that people might be familiar with already, but it's good to always get a refresher, and then they can also learn something new as well. Okay, so I can see you've got a question there, David. We'll cover that while we're building the lead funnel out, because that is something that I can talk about there. Which does bring me to another point, that we are going to have a Q&A session at the end. If you've got questions about anything that I'm doing on screen, be sure to ask me and I'll do my best to answer them. If you've got any more general questions about Convertri or other areas of the app, if you could save those until the end, that would be much appreciated, just so we can keep this moving nice and smoothly. Okay, so let's get started then. We're in our funnel here. And we're going to start off by making a new page so that we can build out our opt-in form. So you can see here when you click new page, these are all of Convertri's page templates. We have hundreds of them in the app, and you can use these whenever you like to build out pages. If you want to make one that looks similar to this and just make a few edits, you can do that. But today I'm going to start by building one from scratch so I can show you the full process. So Click create a page from scratch, and then we're going to give it a name, and we're just going to call it opt-in. Once we've done that, the page will be created, and if I go to edit page, this is going to open up the Convertri page editor. So you can see on the left hand side here, this is the elements tray, and this is where you add all the elements that you want on your pages into the editor. So to start with, we're going to get the background image added. So we'll drag an image onto the page, and this will open up the media gallery. As you can see here, this is where all the images that I've uploaded are stored. So you can see these are ones I've uploaded in the past, and I've also got folders to separate those. So for example, if I go into a folder here, this is going to be the ones that I've uploaded specifically into this folder, some nice cute puppies there. But if I go back to my home folder, I can access all of them and all of the other ones I've added. We've also got this Pixabay option here. So this is a direct integration with Pixabay itself, and it allows you to search from Convertri but onto the Pixabay site. So I'm not sure how many of you will be familiar with Pixabay, but it's basically a photo sharing website where you can use stock images completely for free. This is included in your Convertri subscription, so there is no extra charge for this. And I'll do a little demo now. If someone just drops in something in the chat that I can search for on Pixabay, then I can show you guys an example. Okay, so David has said cats. So if we search for cats, this is now going to display some images that you would also be shown if you went to pixabay.com and searched for cats. You can see some really cool looking cats here. And you can then add these to your Convertri pages just by clicking on the image you like and then clicking select. Now, the only downside is we've got this resolution here, which is capped at 1920 by 1206 pixels. Now, this is still a decent sized image, but because Convertri doesn't have any speed issues when handling larger images, we always recommend uploading your images directly so that you can avoid this Pixabay resolution cap. So, for example, if I go to my home folder and then go to one of the images that I want to use today, if I select that, you can see the resolution here is much higher. And when I add it to my page and later on when we publish it, you'll see that this won't actually affect the loading time at all. So I'll hit select, so I want to use this as my background image. And now it's on my page. I'm just going to make it full width using the double-headed arrow here. And then from here, I can resize it using the drag handles at the top and at the bottom so that it fills my page like so. Okay, so we've got our background image, and now I'm just going to add a couple of panels onto the page, one at the top and one at the bottom, to create like a header and a footer. So you can see here, if I drag the panel on, move it up to the top, again use the full width tool, that snaps it to the edges, and then I can move the panel up or down to resize it like so. So this is a nice just way to bookend the page. This isn't really essential to the lead collection process, but it does make the page look quite nice. And I can edit the color of the panel as well in element properties and then under the background option. So I can open the color picker here, and this is a really cool feature because I can choose a color I want, but I can also see the changes being applied live on the page. So let's say I want to start off with like a light pinky color, and then I'm deciding I want to go darker. I can see the different shades on the page updating, which is really useful from a design perspective. I'm going to go for like a beigey color, like a creamy beige, like so. When I'm done, I can hit select. You'll see these RGB values here, and this is for the specific color in the color picker. But if you actually want to use the exact same color on another element, for example, a text element, you can either make a note of these or copy them using the Control-C shortcut on your keyboard and then paste them into the new color option for that element, and it will give you the exact same color. So when you're done, hit select. And then now what I can do is I can actually clone this element so that it is an exact copy by using this clone button here. So once it's selected like it is now, if I hit clone, I can then drag it down to the end and I've got the exact same color, the exact same element. And if I want to change the size a little bit, I can still do so. But that's just a nice time-saving trick because you don't have to add the panel again. Okay, so now we've got our page set up and ready to be built on, we can start adding our opt-in form. Now, this is where, David, I can talk a little bit about your question, because we're going to be using a panel to contain all the other elements. So we'll add the panel to the page like so, and then what we'll do first is just resize it to about the size of our opt-in form, like this, and then we're going to add the text elements onto the page. So we'll type out our copy for the lead magnet that we are advertising. This is going to be our heading. And then we're also going to add some body text, which basically just describes what the lead magnet is that we are advertising or giving away to our prospects. So it's always good to have a little bit of text which is explaining that, because then the people on your page know what it is you are obviously advertising. So I'll just get this written out now. And the reason that I'm typing this out is because if I was to copy and paste it from the other page, the default text style changes that I actually make in a moment won't be applied, because the text has already been copied in from another source. Okay, so we've got the main copy there, and lastly, we just need to add a little bit of text that prompts the user on the page to enter their details. And finally, we're just going to add a bit of text which is called spam text, and this essentially just reassures the prospect that you're never going to spam them and that you're using their details in a safe manner. And this isn't actually a legal requirement, but it is something I would always recommend if you're building out a simple lead page like this where you're collecting details, because people might be a little bit wary of entering their information, such as an email address or their name. So it's always good to have something on there that reassures them that you're not using the data in a malicious way. Okay, so now going back to David's question, he's asking that if he wants to move the background but not the text, when he clicks the background, it moves everything. So I think this is what you mean here, David. If I select my background panel, you can see it's also selecting the elements within it, so that when I move it around, it's dragging them along. Now this is deliberate, and this is because panels, when they contain these elements, this essentially groups them together for that exact reason, so they are contained within it. So if you want to select a background and move the background without the elements here, what you'd need to do is something like this. You could resize it and move it around on its own and then resize it back. Or you'd have to move the text elements out one by selecting them like so and moving them out of the way. Now we do have a little shortcut which will help show you what elements are contained within others, and that is the element outlines under display. You can see here where the edges of the elements lie. So if I move this text here so that the edge of it is outside, when I now move the panel, it's not contained. So it's only if all of the lines are within the panel that the elements are actually contained. So there you have it. That is how containment works. So hopefully that's helped you, David, in understanding why that is happening and how to work around it. It's just the way the panels work, though, because it's easier to build pages if you can contain other elements within them. So I'm just going to turn these element outlines off for now and get back to building out the opt-in form. And the first thing that I want to do is change my default text styles on my page. So to do that, I'm going to go to Page. And what this allows me to do is apply a font type and, different styles to all text elements that are added. So if I go to default text styles, you'll see there's 4 options. We've got a paragraph text, heading 1, heading 2, and hyperlink. And you can set a text style for each of these options, so that when you add a text element and you change it to whichever one of these modes, it will then conform to the styles that you've set up here. So if you keep an eye on the text in the background, you'll see when I change the font family, so let's pick one that I like. I quite like Lato, it's quite clean. If I choose that, it's snapped to change to Lato. Font size I'm pretty happy with. The line spacing I'm just going to bump up slightly to 1.5. And I'm happy with that now, so I'm going to click Done. And you can see this has changed here to all of the text settings that I just set up in the default text styles. Now I also want to change the heading here to be a different style, so I'm going to set up a heading 1 style as well. This time I'm going to choose a different font, one that stands out more. Let's go Noto Sans, and we can take the font size down a little bit to about 30, and we'll keep the spacing like so. And then I'm going to hit Done, and you'll notice that this time it hasn't actually updated, but that's because it's still set to the paragraph style. So if I now highlight this text like so, and then click More, here I can change it to be either heading 2, heading 1, or paragraph. Once I do that, it will change to the style that I've just set up. So as you can see here, we've now got our heading 1 style for this text element. Okay, so the next thing I need to do on this form is add some input elements where users are able to enter their information. So to do this, I'm going to go back to my elements tray. I'm going to click Form Elements like so, and then I'm going to add first name. I'm going to add email, and lastly, I'm going to add a submit button, which is what the user will click once they've entered their information, and that is what sends them to the next page and sends the information to your autoresponder. So you can see I've got these here, and they don't actually match the text style that I've set up, and that is because I haven't actually changed this for individual elements. So you do actually need to do this for each form element you add. So if I go to element properties once it's selected, and then if I go to input properties, I can change the placeholder text, the color, the text color, and the font family, as you can see. So the placeholder text is essentially what's displayed there. So I could change it to enter your first name if I wanted to. I'll just leave it as first name though for this example. I can change the placeholder color and the text color. I'm going to leave that the same though for this one. And I can change the font family so that it matches the fonts that I chose in my default text styles. So in this case, that would be Lato for both the first name and the email. And then for my actual submit button, because this is my call to action button, I'm going to want to change it to my heading text, which was Noto Sans. And I can then change the label on this as well so that it really relates to my call to action, which in this case is download. So this is going to take them to a page where they can download it, but even though they're not getting the file by clicking this button, they're still wanting to download the file itself. So it's good to have that synced up nicely. I'll change the font weight to bold, and I'll boost the size a little bit to maybe 24, like so. And I'm pretty happy with how that looks now. So the last thing I need to do on my form in terms of the layout of this is actually make sure it's looking a bit neater, because as you can see here, everything's contained nicely, but it's all a little bit all over the place, a little bit skew width, and we want it to look nice and neat. So what I'm going to do is select the panel, and much like we spoke about earlier, yes, I can see, David, you spoke about your OCD there. Mine is going crazy too. That's why I want to get this sorted nice and quickly, and we can luckily do that pretty easily with the alignment tool. So we can actually use the containment to our advantage in this way, because all of these other elements now are selected, which means when I go to the alignment tool here, click the drop down and click center align, all of these elements that are contained within the panel are going to snap to the middle, like so. That obviously now looks a lot better. Now, as you can see, the spacing isn't quite even, so we can move that around to our preference. We can move this up a little bit higher, along with the copy text as well. And likewise, we can move these up a little bit. Now, these two text elements here, although they are conforming to the style that we set, I can actually make edits to these still as well. I am doing that with my arrow keys, yeah. So you can move it around, obviously, with the cursor, like so. You can use your arrow keys, which is what I'm doing here. Or you can go into element properties, go on positioning, and you can actually change the size here or the position on the X or the Y axis, like so. So if I want to move it down, I can just increase the position, or up, like so. So I can make edits to these text elements still. I can just highlight it, and bring the size down slightly, because this isn't really a main piece of text, this is just an additional extra. So I want that just to be a little bit smaller than the previous text elements, like so. Okay, so I want to make sure now that we've got space here in between these elements, which is evenly distributed. So to do that, I can select all of them together by clicking on each one and holding the Shift key. So that's Shift clicking all of them, which selects them all at once. If I then go back to the alignment tools and use distribute vertically, that will put an even amount of space between each element that I've selected. So like so, there's now an even amount of space, which means our form is looking a lot neater. And the last thing I want to do with it is just make it look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. And to do that, I'm going to go into the element properties, go to background, and then on the background fill, I'm going to change the opacity of the element down to about 0.8, 0.75. That's just going to make it a little bit transparent. Again, I can type this in manually, so if I wanted to just have it as 0.5, I could do that. Or I can use the bar on the side, like so. So once I'm happy with that, I can hit select. I still want to make some changes to this though, and the last one of those is a border. And I'm not actually adding an outline to this. What I'm adding is border radius, which is going to be actually making the edges rounded. So you can see the border width is at 0, which means there's no color being added. And if I add a border radius, I've turned the toggle on so that it's one radius for all corners. I can then use my arrows, like so. You can see it's changing on the screen, or I can type in what I want. So let's say 25. And if I now come out of the element properties and clear the selection, up here this button means I'm deselecting all the elements on the page. I can see I've got some nice rounded edges, and that makes the form look a lot better and a lot neater. So we've got a pretty nice looking page here, built out pretty quickly, and I'm now just going to add the last thing on the desktop page, which is going to be down here on the footer, and that is a privacy policy link. So I'll add my text element. You'll see when I type out privacy policy, this time it's matching the text styles that we set up. I'm then going to make sure it's center aligned, and I'm also going to center align the text element itself, which I can do just by clicking on this alignment option. I don't need to select the drop down, because that is what the default one is. It's center aligning it to the middle of the page. Finally, I just need to highlight the text and add a hyperlink. And I can here add my link like so. So I'll just use the Convertri website's privacy policy page. I think that's the right one off the top of my head. Obviously, feel free to use your own ones if you've got one made up. And once you've done that, what I'd always recommend is making sure you turn on open in a new tab. And you're going to want to do this for pretty much any other links that are on your page that go elsewhere. So these are what we call leaky links, things that go to like a privacy policy, a disclaimer page, maybe a copyright page, that sort of thing. Because by doing this, what you're actually allowing your customer to do is be taken to this other page, but then your main sales page or opt-in page is still open in the browser. If you don't do this, this page they're on now, once they click this button, is going to basically disappear and be replaced with the privacy policy. Once they're then finished on that page, they may just close the tab entirely instead of returning to the sales page. So in that sense, you essentially are losing a prospect. So always make sure you've got this option on here, open in a new tab. So I'll hit save like so, and as you can see, it's now underlined, so the hyperlink has been added. David's asking that sometimes he's noticed the length of the page when it's previewed is much longer than the actual length of the page in the editor, so I assume you mean the elements here. Now, this can happen, but it's usually a case of if there's an element that's been added down here that you just can't see. So for example, if we were to add a panel down here and make it white, by going into the background and changing it to be white like so. If I then deselect it, it doesn't actually look like there's anything here, but when I publish this page, it's going to publish it up until this point, because if I turn my element outlines back on, you can see it's still here, which might be why that's happening. You may have just misplaced an element. So always make sure before you publish, turn on your element outlines and just check that there isn't one down there, because it will publish up until the last element on the page. Okay, no worries, David. It's a good one to cover because it can happen quite easily if you're just playing around with things and you forget it's there. So that's a good question to ask. So I'll save the page now, but I also want to go into the mobile editor and just check that my page looks okay for the mobile view. Now this is the automatically generated version of this page that our algorithm has built. I haven't had to do any changes. You've seen the whole process, but this is what the algorithm's built. And it is a pretty good replica of the desktop page. And that's because I've built it using the fundamentals that I'm going to talk about later. But just a few things about the mobile editor while we're here. You can actually choose to move things around in mobile, but they don't affect the desktop. So if I move my heading down like this, but move my main text up for some reason, maybe I want them swapped around. And then if I go back to desktop, you'll see that I won't actually have affected the desktop page. If I then decide that I don't like these changes, I can just click remobilize, which reruns the automatic mobile conversion. If I hit that and remobilize all, that'll put everything back to the automatic conversion that we have generated. I can also change the text font size scaling on mobile. So if I highlight one here, I can change the default from 150 down to say 125, or I can do that at page level, which essentially applies it like in the default text style to all elements. So for whether they're paragraph or heading, you can see you've got the option to change the scaling. If I do this, it's going to change it for all of them in the background as well, like you can see there. Obviously, that is now affecting this page quite badly, so I'm going to put that back to the 150 that it was at previously. So once we've done this, it's a little bit messed up now, so what I'm going to do is just move an element and remobilize everything. Again, putting it back to the automatic conversion. So I'll save the page now, and what I can do now is actually exit this page and build out my thank you page. Now, I'm not going to publish this page quite yet because I do like to build things or publish things basically backwards from the end to the beginning, because that way you're going to be able to connect up your form much easier. So I'm not connecting up my form just yet. So although we've got the elements here, if I was to publish this page right now, nothing would actually happen because I haven't set up my form, which allows the data to be submitted. So I'm going to save, go back to my funnel by clicking the cross, and instead of creating a new page from scratch, this time I'm going to clone the page I've just built. So I'm going to click the three-dot menu, click more to bring up the other options, and then choose clone. And I'm going to give this a name, which is going to be thank you page. I'll hit clone like that, and now I've got the duplicate of my opt-in page here, but I can make edits to it to make it more like a thank you page. So what this shows you is that you don't have to build out each page in your funnel from scratch. If you want to keep your house style, keep the same design, you can use that clone feature and basically use it like a template, so you can then make edits. So for example, I don't really need all of this text here. Instead, I can just right click below to download your copy of 7 tips for slimming without starving. I don't really need to repeat myself there with the same text. I can get rid of this prompt. I can get rid of the inputs. I'll keep the download button because I'm going to need to repurpose that as a button which basically allows me to or allows my prospect to download my lead magnet. And then I'm going to get rid of the spam text as well because they're not actually inserting any information here. So I'll resize my panel to make it fit. I'll reposition it so that it's in the center, more or less, and then I can use my alignment tool again to make sure everything's in the middle. So center align is going to put it in the center, like so. I just want to change the look of the download button because it makes it a little bit different. So I'm just going to basically change the background of it to a different color. Maybe let's go for like a green. And let's darken it a little bit, like so. That's quite nice. And then I need to make one crucial change to this button other than any design ones that I've made, and that is to change the mode from sign up to download. What this does is it allows me to attach a file to the button so that when someone clicks on it, the file is downloaded. It either then forces the download on click, which happens if I turn this toggle on, or if the toggle is off, this allows the browser to open the file according to the user's default computer settings. So usually that means it opens it in a new tab and they can then view the file and download it themselves. To add a file, it's really easy. Once you've set it to download, you just click the little folder icon like so. And here you can see all the domains you've got in your account and all the files you've uploaded for each domain. Again, if you want to upload one, just click that button, or you can use one you've previously uploaded, like I've got here. You can see that we've got actually a limit on the file size, and that is 40 megabytes. But this doesn't mean you can't attach a higher sized file to a button. It just means you'd need to go about it in a different way. So if I add this like so, and click select, you can see here the download is added. If I changed this mode to link, then this box here would be where I can enter a URL. So you could actually upload your file, if it was larger than 40 megabytes, to a hosting service, something like Amazon S3, and then you can add the link, which will then take the prospect to the page they download the file into the little modal here, and you'd need to make sure the mode was set to link. So even though we do have that file size limit, it's worth remembering that it actually doesn't affect things too much because there are workarounds we can use so that you're not limited to that size. So I'm pretty much happy with my thank you page now. I've made the small edits that I need to, and I can now save the page. Just check the mobile view. What I'm going to do is, because this wouldn't fill the whole mobile screen, I'm going to just select my background image and drag it down, and I'm going to hold shift and drag it down like so. That's going to move the bottom element down as well. And then I'm going to reposition my panel so that it's in the middle of the page like so. So that looks a lot better now for my mobile screen users. They're not just getting sort of half a page. It will pretty much cover the whole screen size. So again, I'll click save, go back to desktop, and I'm now going to publish my page at my final URL. So you can see here, this is my domain. This is a Convertri subdomain, which you get 3 free ones in your Convertri account. And you can then add a page path to this. So I can type in thank you, and let's put a GS there for getting started. And this is now going to be my final URL. So when I publish the page, it's going to be spinning in the corner like so. And once it's done that, I can view the page. As you can see, it's now published. The green tick indicates that. And I can now click the blue button to view my page, which will take me to the live version, which, as you can see, loaded in a lightning fast speed, despite the massive sized image we used at the start. I can now download this, but obviously we haven't finished yet. Even though our thank you page is published, we haven't actually set up our form, so we still have a little bit of work to do. To do that, we need to go back to our funnel. Okay, so we're in the funnel now, and before we go back to the opt-in page to set up our form, we're going to use this arrow tool here to make a connection between the two pages. Now, in practice, this arrow that I've just added to this page hasn't actually done anything at all, but what it does mean is that when I go back to my opt-in page and actually set up my form, this page here will now be automatically suggested, so the URL here will automatically be suggested to the Forms Setup menu, which allows me to choose a thank you page redirect. What this means is I don't have to remember this URL, I don't have to write it down anywhere, I don't have to get to this page and actually forget it and then have to come back and look what it is, which I have actually done on this call a number of times. So I now always make sure I'm using the arrow tool because it does also provide, a little bit of a visual aid. I know these pages go together, but also it helps Convertri know where you want the people on this page to end up, which is this one here. So if I go back to my opt-in page and go into the editor again, I'll show you what that looks like. We're going to be setting up our form, so we're going to use the Forms menu here on the top toolbar. That's going to open up the Configure Form menu, and here I can choose an autoresponder from our list of API integrations. I'm going to choose MailChimp, and then from here I choose the list that I would like to add my prospects to. So this is a list that I set up in MailChimp itself. So this is one I've set up in the past, and it means that when people fill out their information, this is the list that they'll be added to in my autoresponder. Now you can see these types here, and this is essentially meaning that the type that is set in my form menu needs to match the type that is set in my element properties so that the information ends up in the right place in my autoresponder. So without them being the correct type and matching the input on the page, the information won't be passed. So you can see we've got a fixed field here, which is email. So when you're using MailChimp, you have to have an email input on the page, and the type for that has to be set to email. So that means when I go to my element properties for my email one, I need to make sure the type is set to email. And here I've chosen to have the type as first name. So the type for my first name input needs to be set to first name as well. So I'll click next. And now you can see this is where I'm using the arrows to my advantage because the thank you page URL has been automatically added to the redirect URL option. If I click suggestions, it's right here. This basically means if I had other pages linked with the arrows, they would also appear. So it's a really useful tool, and it's going to save you a lot of time and some headaches as well trying to remember those URLs, especially if they're a little bit longer than this one. So I'll choose it. I want to make sure this is toggled off because if I toggle this on, it means we're staying on the page and not redirecting. So the form will be submitted, but they won't actually be sent to the thank you page, which in our case would basically kill our funnel because they then can't download the lead magnet. So I'm going to make sure that's toggled off. I'm going to click done like so. And now I'm just going to check my input types are set properly, my field type. So if I go form field settings, you can see it's correctly set to first name and the email is correctly set to email. And I'm going to make sure email, and I'm going to make sure both email and first name are required, which means if you try and fill out this form without entering something into one of these, you won't be able to submit it. So I'm happy with that now, and I'm pretty confident that's going to be working correctly. So all I need to do is publish my page, and I'll call it opt-in GS. Hit publish. Once that's done, we'll have our lead funnel live on the internet. Okay, you can see it's now got the green published mark. I can view my page now. Again, notice the quick loading times, and my form can now be submitted, and I'll be taken to my thank you page, which I've just built, right in front of all of your very eyes, and I can now download the file as well, which will take me to the lead magnet, as you can see here. So there you have it, everyone. That is a simple lead funnel built in Convertri. And I hope you all found that demonstration useful, and I'm very happy now to take any questions that you have about that demonstration. You're very welcome. People are saying thank you in the chat. You are very welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. No worries for the questions, David. That is what I'm here for. So David's asked if you can hook up forms to Zapier to push the data to a CRM versus email software. You can do that. So if you go into the forms menu, you'll notice that we have a Zapier option here. You'll need to set up a Zapier integration in your account, which I can show you where to go to do that now. And then depending on the software you're using in Zapier will depend if they have it available and you can connect it up to Zapier. But if it's something they have available, you can connect those things to Convertri using Zapier, definitely. So I'm in my account section and then going to integrations on the left. And then here I can go down and find Zapier, which is actually at the top, so I don't need to go down like so. And I can then click on that to integrate it using the little, you'll see the little tick once it's integrated. Yeah, you can hook it up to Zapier and to an autoresponder. So as long as you've got Zapier integrated, you'll still get the information in your autoresponder. You can also then have Zapier do other third-party things as well. So extra functionality there using Zapier. Okay, are there any more questions about the demo specifically before we move on to where I'm going to show you some of my favorite things, favorite shortcuts really, and how to save some time in the Convertri editor. Now, I did do a few of those in that demonstration. You may have picked up on them, but I'll go through them in more detail in a second. If we're all done for questions for now, that is anyway. There will be a chance to ask some more at the end though, so don't worry. I'm not going to rush off if you guys still have some questions to ask me. Okay, it looks like we are ready to move on then. So I'm going to go back to my campaigns menu and go down to my getting started webinar funnel, which is where I've got my 2 pages here. And I've now got my 3rd page, which is where I'm going to show you the editor tips and tricks section. So if I go into the funnel, into the page, sorry, I can now get on to show you some shortcuts that will really save you some time in Convertri. And I'm also going to be able to show you some of the ways, or the way in which you can actually build a page out in the desktop version so that it mobilizes a lot better, so that you're not wasting time building the same page for both desktop and mobile, and you're making the most of Convertri's built-in mobile algorithm. So first things first, I did show you this previously, and it is something that I don't actually use when I'm building out pages myself, but I do use them if I'm looking for elements or if I'm making sure certain things are contained, and that is the element outlines under the display option. If I turn those on, you can see we get these pink outlines here applied to all the elements on the page. And if you are new to Convertri, this is something I would recommend using at least for your first 2 or 3 goes at building out pages, just so you get a feel for where the elements are on the page and where they're starting and finishing. It's also quite helpful if you're looking to select an element like this text element here, but you don't know whereabouts to click to select it. So for example, if I click here, I haven't actually selected this element specifically. I've only selected the panel, which contains them all, but it means I can't move this one around on its own. So the element outlines helps me with that, because I can see here where I need to click to select each element. So I'll leave them on now for the purpose of this demonstration. It is personal preference, which is why we don't have them set to be automatically on. But if you want to turn them on, just go to display here and then click the toggle like so. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you then is how to delete an entire section of a page. Again, we're talking about containment here, because let's take this menu section, for example. This section here is completely contained by the black backing panel, which means if I actually move this around, they're all going to come with it. So I can use this to my advantage if I want to get rid of the section entirely, and just select the backing panel and then either click delete on my keyboard or click the delete selected icon. And that's going to get rid of all the elements that are connected to that background panel, which now means I've got the section out of my page because I don't want it anymore. So I've deleted it just in one click though. I don't have to delete all the elements one by one. Now you can see obviously in a case like that, I've now got a large chunk of white space on my page, which can be a little bit frustrating because I don't want there to be a big empty space on my page. My users are going to be confused if they see that. And I also don't want to move each element up individually to get rid of that. Luckily, Convertri has a shortcut for this, and I can use it by selecting the element that is directly below the white space. In this case, it's our white background panel. And once I've selected that, I can then use the remove white space above button. And if I scroll up a little bit and then click it, you'll see it will snap up to this pink line, which is the next element above. So if I click that button, you can see automatically it zooms up the page with the elements contained within it, and also with all the elements below it as well, which for me is the really key point here, because I don't have to do that for each element each time creating more space. I can just do it for the one below the white space, use the button, and the whole page jumps up with it. So that white space has now gone. Now you might want to actually add some white space to your page if you want to add a section, and to do that you can move everything down in one go as well. And what you're going to need to do to make use of this feature is just basically select the element that you want to move, where you want the white space to be above it. So let's say we want the white space to be in between this background panel and in between this one. I'll select this background panel, I'll hold shift and then drag down, and that's going to create white space, and it's going to move all the elements along with it. as well. So again, I'm not having to do this now one by one, which saves me a lot more time in the editor. I can use the undo tool here, or I can use Control and Z on my keyboard to move it up again, which basically undoes what I just did. Okay, so another keyboard shortcut now that I'm going to show you is actually the cloning tool that we've got here, but in keyboard shortcut version. So if I'm editing something, at the bottom of my page, like in this case here, my images, and I don't really want to actually use the clone button because it's all the way at the top, what I can do is select the image, hold Alt on the keyboard, and then drag. So that's click the image or click the element. It doesn't have to be an image. Hold Alt and then drag like so, and that's going to make a duplicate of that image. So an exact copy. And what that basically means is I can easily clone elements without having to select it, go up to the top each time, then come back down. I can use the keyboard to help me with that. So these elements here, they're looking a little bit skew with again, and it's about time I show you some more of our alignment tools, I think. So I'm going to add a panel, and this is going to make me able to contain all of these images. I'm then going to use the reordering tools here. I'm going to send them backwards until they are all in front of this panel. So I was sending the panel backwards there. Now they're contained like so, which means I can apply the alignment tools to all of the images which are within this panel. So if I hit the drop down, and this time I'll choose middle align, instead of aligning them to the center vertically, it will align them to the middle horizontally like so. They're all to this middle here, and they're now nicely lined up. If I then select them all, select the backing panel, and then if I hit justify horizontally, it's going to put the even amount of space in between each element as well, which now this looks a lot nicer. So if I was to just change the background color and so that make the panel not visible, you can see I've now got a nicely lined up set of images all contained within this panel that I can move around as one element. Okay, so we're now moving on to the most important thing, in my opinion, on this webinar, and that is learning how to build a page in desktop mode here so that in mobile version, it mobilizes well. And when I say mobilizes well, what I mean is that Convertri's automatic generation of the page makes it look as near to this one as possible. So if we take this page for an example, this is a Convertri template page that we have deliberately left built out in a way that mobilizes poorly. And I'll show you the example of that now. So if I go to my mobile editor and scroll all the way up to the top, you'll see here that on this page, unlike on the desktop page where bread follows the text about bread and the same for pastry and coffee, on mobile, we have the 3 headings listed first, followed by the 3 descriptive texts. Now, this is obviously not how a user wants the page to look, because if they want to read about bread, they want to read about it directly underneath bread, not all the way down here. So the same for pastry and coffee. Now, this is the automatic version that Convertri's created, but we can build the page out in a way to avoid these little mistakes. And the way to do that is first to understand how the automatic version of the page is created. And to do that, what I'm going to do is compare the Convertri mobile algorithm to someone reading a book. So they're coming onto your page, the algorithm, they're looking at each element and they're reading the page as a book. So they're seeing this one first, this background panel here, then they're seeing the logo, then the we are open, then the image, then bread, pastry, coffee, and then the text about each one, and they're adding them to the mobile version in that exact order. So you'll see if we go back, you can see we've got our panel, followed by logo, we are open, image, bread, pastry, coffee, 3 descriptive texts. However, we can actually trick the mobile algorithm into thinking that these 2 elements are one and the same, and so in that way, it displays them at the same time or in the same place. So what we can do is use panels to contain the elements so that what happens is if we add a panel to the page, like so, and then reorder it so that it contains those 2 elements, instead of actually hitting bread first, it's going to hit the panel first, but then it's going to display everything contained within it in the panel on the mobile version. So it won't hit the panel and then put the bread and the text outside of it because they're within it, so it will hit the panel. put the panel on the mobile page. And if we do the same for pastry, like so, make sure it's containing the two elements. That's where the element outlines come into play. Send it backwards twice. And then for a third time, add a panel onto the coffee text, like so. You can see these are contained within their panels so that if we now go to the mobile version of the page, they're actually displayed together, and we don't have to make any changes to do that on the mobile version. All we need to do is build out our pages using panels to contain the things that we want displayed together on the mobile page. So if I'm building out a page with loads of these headings, if I didn't have my panels, I've got a situation where I'm going to have to move them all around on mobile version, which basically is doing work that I don't need to do. So by using panels, I'm cutting out that waste of time that I'd be actually doing if I didn't know how to do this. So the panels are essential. They're, like I said, it's one of the most important things when using Convertri because it's just going to save you a ton of time. So please do remember that one, guys. Using panels to contain elements so that when you're going to the mobile version, it's actually going to do the same thing as your desktop version, like so. Okay, so that is me done for my editor tips and tricks. Does anyone have any questions about any of that I've just shown you before I move on to talk a little bit about the extra training content that we're dropping into the knowledge base in the next few weeks? Okay, so Frank's asked if he could just see the cloning shortcut again, which is no problem. Obviously, you can't see my keyboard, but what I'm doing is selecting the element I want to clone. I'm holding down Alt and then just clicking it and dragging like so. And if I kept doing that each time, it's going to make a copy of it like so. You can see Alt, click and drag. And that's just a nice quick shortcut. And someone's asked, which is a good question here, Sarah, thank you for that, about these blue lines here. These teal lines, I'm not sure if you could see them clearly. You could probably see them better here. So these are basically just the guidelines. They don't actually have an effect on the live page at all. You'll have noticed that on our opt-in page that we made before. And if I go to display, this is the guideline width. So I can actually set the width to anything I want. So if I wanted it to be like 1 to 60, like so, that's going to make them wider. I can use the arrows to resize them. And basically what this is like the safe space on the Convertri page so that everything within that space should be shown. So the default one, this was built out quite a few years ago when screens were smaller. So this is a very safe estimate. But anything within these lines would 100% be shown on all desktop screen sizes. You could probably get away with now like 1280 because that's going to be most size monitors. So pretty much everything within these lines now, if we set it to there, would be shown. But if you want to be a bit more conservative about it, you can obviously lower it slightly. You can still have elements outside it, like you can see here. If we do that, and then let's say I preview this page, the chances are all of that will still be shown. But it's just really for guideline purposes. It doesn't actually affect the live page. You can see here, that's still comfortably shown with a bit to spare as well. So yeah, don't get too hung up on the guidelines. You can always change them or restore them to default if you want to. Okay, I haven't seen any more questions coming in about that, so I'm just going to talk a little bit now about the Convertri unofficial summit event that we ran in April. Well, I say we ran, it was actually run by 3 of our power users who established themselves in the Facebook group. That is Darren Basinger, Eric Mulford and Jim Rigney. They are 3 guys who absolutely love Convertri. They've really got the most out of it, building out loads of sites for different clients and basically using it to their advantage. And they thought it'd be a great idea to create an event which shared their success stories with you and gave you some insight on how you can sort of follow them in their footsteps. So we're now happy to say we're getting the replays for that event coming in now. If you go to our knowledge base, help.convertri.com, I'll drop this in the chat now so that you can all see it. And if you then go to training webinars, you'll see the first 2 that we've added so far. We've got Darren Basinger, website design that converts visitors into cash, and similar, Jim Rigney, building money sites and pages. as I said, it was run by Darren, Eric, and Jim, and I also helped out as well. But they take all the credit. I was just there, just to add some content. These guys delivered a great event, and it's really, in your best interest to check this out if you're looking to get really using Convertri to your advantage, using it to build sites for clients. Obviously, you may be just starting, so it's something you could possibly bookmark for when you're getting a bit more comfortable with Convertri, but I'd really go and check them out. They're all great guys, and they're really willing to help people that are looking to learn about Convertri and how they can actually make the most of it. So it's something that we're adding to the knowledge base now. We've got the first 2. We've got 4 more to come, so keep an eye on them dropping in the knowledge base over the next few weeks. As I said, you'll find them, like I said, in help.convertri.com and then under training webinars. And you'll also find them in the Facebook group, which if you're not a part of, I would really recommend joining. Again, I'll drop that link in the chat. It's the Convertri Clubhouse where we all hang out, all members of staff. You can see Neil's in there. Andy, the CEO, is in there. Other support staff members as well. And we've got over 6,500 members, all Convertri users, all helping each other out. You can see Jim here. He's got a suggestion about something. Neil sharing a new feature that's coming out to the app soon. We've got basically a whole host of posts in here which will either help you using Convertri or you might learn something new about it. And if you've got a question to ask, don't be afraid to post it in here. Someone will get back to you and will definitely be able to help you out with it, whether that's me or another staff member or another user. Or if you just want to talk about something to do with digital marketing, to do with page design, anything you want to post in there relating to Convertri or the digital marketing world is welcome, and I'd really recommend you all joining it. Lastly then, I'll add our support email into the chat. And as I said, feel free to email us anytime. We are pretty much 24/7 on the support desk. Someone will be manning it at all times, so you shouldn't really be waiting more than a few hours for a reply, and then we'll be able to help you with any problems you may have. I can't see many questions coming in, which is not a problem. Donna's asking when the next Getting Started training is. That'll be in 2 weeks' time at the same time, so Thursday, 4 p.m, and that will be on let me just check my calendar, the 10th of June. There will be a replay of this session, though, which will be posted on the knowledge base as well in the Getting Started webinars section. As you can see, all the rest are here. So you'll be able to see that from probably Monday or Tuesday. And I can see a load of you guys saying thank you here, which is great to see. I'm glad that you've enjoyed this today. I hope you've learned something. I certainly enjoy doing these because I know people get great value from them. So I'm glad a lot of you have learned something about Convertri today. All right, well, I'm going to wrap things up then. I can't see any questions coming in. And like I say, feel free to get in touch with us at support if you think of something later on, or in the Facebook group if you have any queries or anything on your mind at all. All right, thanks everyone for coming today then, and I'll see you around very soon. Bye-bye.